enthusiasts. Welcome to Learning Frontiers, the podcast where we explore groundbreaking ideas, approaches in education that are shaping the future of learning. I'm your host, Laura, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for today's episode. In each episode of Learning Frontiers, we dive deep into topics that are transforming the educational landscape, from innovative teaching methods to emerging technologies and everything in between. Our goal is to provide educators, administrators, and anyone passionate about education with inspiring insights, practical strategies, and thought-provoking discussions that can inform and elevate their practice. Today's episode is no exception. We have a very special guest joining us, Elizabeth Huson, District Distance Learning Specialist at Erie 2 Chautauqua Cattaraugus BOCES. Elizabeth is an expert in experiential learning and has dedicated her career to helping educators harness the power of hands-on immersive experiences to engage students and deepen their learning. In this episode, Elizabeth will share her expertise on experiential learning theory and provide practical tips and resources for teachers looking to bring these methods into their K-12 classrooms. From virtual field trips to site visits, Elizabeth explores how educators can create dynamic environments that inspire curiosity, foster critical thinking, and prepare students for success in the 21st century. Whether you're a seasoned educator looking to enhance your practice or a curious learner eager to explore new ideas, this episode is sure to leave you inspired and equipped with valuable insights to take back to your classroom or educational setting. So grab your favorite beverage, settle into a comfortable spot, and get ready to embark on a journey of discovery and innovation in education. Let's dive in. Well, Liz, thank you for being here. Is it okay to call you Liz? Because that's
Absolutely.
okay, awesome. So, yeah, and just for the listener and viewers benefit, so Liz and I have known each other for some time now. Liz is part of my family, and I've thoroughly enjoyed watching her career over the many years, and so. I'm very excited about this opportunity to chat with you this afternoon and get some perspective on experiential learning and some of the things that you're working on in your role. So I thought what we might do is start. If you could just start by telling listeners some background on your role as a distance learning specialist with BOCES and how experiential learning fits into your work.
Sure. Distance learning specialist, the big part about distance learning that some people may or may not know, our role is to really help coordinate shared courses. That's where we start. So we have courses, a teacher in one location that is teaching live and sharing their course via video conference. So that's a big part of, any distance learning specialist's role here in New York State. My role goes a little bit further, maybe a little bit sideways. Um, I work with teachers to help them find and implement unique educational opportunities like virtual field trips. I have a speaker series for career connections, a speaker series that I share across the whole consortium for diversity and cultural connections. And our whole consortium also shares class-to-class collaborations where one class in a location will work with another class somewhere else on a project, or meet a class here with another class for a global connection like a mystery Skype or whatnot. So I like to think about things. I had to do something with my daughter, and she's like, "What exactly do you do?" I go, "Well, kind of like Willy Wonka stuff. Like, it's just fun, but it's using technology in a way that can enhance curriculum and really meet different digital fluency goals and understanding and how to use technology."
Maybe I should step back just for a moment and ask you how did this get started for you? How did you get into this role? And then maybe how where you're going today, maybe how you got there. Like, was this
Sure,
something that you thought up, or is it something that you've adapted and kind of taken the ball and run with it from that way? So yeah,
sure,
a little background maybe would help. Yeah.
sure. So, I started my teaching career, 2001. It was my first year in the classroom. I was a middle school English teacher, and sometimes I use technology in the classroom as different things were emerging. Um, Gosh, things like Quizlet. I don't know if it was there, but just quiz type programs and things in the classroom. Doing shared things on Google Docs when that was new with my students on projects so they could work together, and kind of really figure out how to collaborate on documents and whatnot. But I started in the English classroom. I was there for a little over a decade. Then I was home with my kids and raising my kids. I went back and was a substitute teacher for a little bit before winding up. Of course, during the pandemic, when I was teaching full time again, I was online like everybody else, teaching through Zoom, and had the opportunity when the school I was at, they were able to be back full time, everybody in 5 days a week. But there were still so many just guidelines and stipulations. If you were exposed to somebody, you had this much quarantine time. So there were going to be kids that were in and out of school. And there were some families that wanted to keep their kids home, but still experience school. So I kind of pitched, hey, let me coordinate, work with the kids that are home and kids that are out. So I wound up being a distance learning coordinator for the school I was at the time, which was a private high school. And I started learning more about virtual field trips, looking for things to keep the kids engaged and connected because, for social emotional growth and just needs, we need connection. So finding things for the kids to do and stay connected. And then I happened to see this role at Erie 2 BOCES and decided, you know what? I'm going to just apply. And did I know everything that I know now? Absolutely not. I learned a lot along the way. Um, I'm very fortunate. So I work with 22 school districts in my region, and Erie 2 BOCES is, Western New York. It's Southern Erie County, Chautauqua County, and part of Cattaraugus County. So I work with those 22 districts, K-12 teachers all the way, all across the board. But then I'm also part of a New York State distance learning consortium. So I work with other people that do the same role as I do in different BOCES. And I've learned a lot from them. They did have a career speaker series, these career connections. Um, but I had an idea after seeing a speaker at UB that you know, it was the editor of the 1619 project, and she was talking and just talked about how it's tomorrow's generation that is going to start to change the world. And I thought about, oh, this is great, they have kids come in, like they have free tickets for students to come and see these speakers at UB. And I wanted to see, since my schools are rural and about at least an hour and a half to 2 hours away, some of them, if we could see some of these speakers and offer it to our teachers. And because of the structure of that program and the contracts of the speakers, it wasn't something that could be done. And that kind of, it was the catalyst, like, well, we can't do it that way. Why don't I do a similar series for our schools
Hmm.
to share? So that's how the diversity and cultural connections kind of came about. And we're putting together a civics connection series right now to help support the seal of civic readiness. So that's just in its outline stage. And, we're starting to align it to what social studies teachers are doing in their classrooms and what they need to do to help these kids reach and achieve the seal of civic readiness for their diplomas. So yeah, exciting things. A lot of it is just ideas, looking at curriculum, looking at, curiosity, like, oh, if I was teaching that, what would I do? And teachers looking for things, something unique and engaging. And, in some cases, gosh, we don't have money for buses to go on this field trip. Do you have anything that we could do through distance learning? Sometimes they come for ideas. Sometimes they see something. I send out newsletters every month. Here are some opportunities. Let me know if you're interested in these or you're looking for an idea. Um, so so yeah, a lot of it is just it's curiosity. And as I've met and networked with more people, I've learned more about things. So I have my little BOCES that I work with, our larger state consortium, and then I happen to be introduced to somebody that's in a global video conference education group, and now I'm a part of that. I'm working with educators around the globe for those kinds of connections. So
Mhm.
it's just a lot of conversation. It's been a lot of learning, and just a lot of being willing to try and jump right in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That sounds great. So, to me, as I have been watching sort of from afar the work that you're doing and some of the learning that I've been doing in my studies, to me, the pieces that fit together is around the desire for experiential learning. So, there's a lot of support out there in the learning sciences for pursuing experiential learning, which is basically learning by doing, right? And coupling that with not only just having exposure to the thing, right, that we're doing or learning about, but also then the reflection and the engagement part of it. So for me, and I'm wondering if you agree, I know we've done a little prep before the session, but so to me the services that you provide or the packaging that you put together as far as these services are a terrific example of a method for experiential learning or bringing experiential learning into the classroom. I guess I would ask you if you agree with that, and then maybe expand on like if so, like how you see that at work, kind of in this the even in the activities that you're working on and planning with your classes, with your teachers and so forth.
Sure. So I do agree that, the things that we do and that what distance learning can offer and, how it's applied in different circumstances is experiential learning. So let me give you a quick example.
Yeah.
Earlier this year, this fall, I worked with my partner in the UK, part of the Global Video Conference Education Group, and we had 4 classes that met up for a conversation with Chris Lubbe, and he is Nelson Mandela's former bodyguard. So he started the conversation. He talked about what it was like to grow up in apartheid in South Africa and how it came to be that he worked with Nelson Mandela and even Desmond Tutu and a little bit about that. But we had given the 4 classes that were connecting. There's one from New York State, from my region, one from the UK, one from Poland, and one from Taiwan. So literally all across the globe. We had given them 2 questions. The first one we asked them was, "What is racism like where you live? And what do you think you can do about it? How do you think we change racism?" So the kids were able to hear what is happening in other countries, how other students their age, and these were high school kids, how they see it. They were able to interact with somebody that was a part of, an incredible movement, with Nelson Mandela to think about how to challenge racism at other times in history and get his feedback on what they had to say. And then they could reflect after the fact with their teachers, gosh, are things that are happening in other parts of the world similar, different? How are they similar, different? And it's funny because the kids prepped their conversations before coming to this Zoom. And so many, the same thing came up with all 4 different conclusions. Like, we need to talk with each other more. We need to understand people who are different. And to see that all around the world, these 4 classes, they'd never met before, they'd never connected, they still came to the same conclusion. That's pretty powerful. You could say it in a book. You could, the teacher could get up there, sage on the stage and say it. You could show them, but for the kids to come to that realization on their own and see that those similarities, it's pretty powerful.
Hmm.
It's the same. I had a class go just do a tour of an aquarium. They couldn't go, again, too far for them to be able to go during the school day, but to be able to see things. And Another one went on a whale watch. These are experiences they may not have otherwise, but then to take what they saw, what they learned, and apply. The one class actually did an experiment with Crisco and water, in ice water, to simulate the blubber based on what they learned. And it was things, the providers quite often, whether you're with a museum, an aquarium, whatever it might be, they give teachers suggestions. Sometimes teachers ask me for suggestions. What can I do before to get ready? What can I do after? How does this connect? But
Mhm, mhm.
there's so much for the kids to take from these experiences. Um, Incredibly powerful. And I am just going to go in a little bit when kids, especially when they are connecting with kids from someplace else. We play this game called Mystery Skype. So geography 20 questions, think yes, no, where in the world are you, sort of thing. And you prep the kids, what are good questions? Like if you ask somebody if they're close to an ocean, well, if you live here, like the Buffalo area, you're closer to the Atlantic Ocean than somebody, in Oklahoma. So, questions like that, proximity, you teach them how to ask good questions and to really think about things. But once they figure out where they are, and sometimes, and I will say this, the kids communicating from other parts of the world, pretty much anywhere else, the kids speak English. So there's not really that much of a communication barrier sometimes with if they're still learning, but it's amazing because you really can connect with anywhere. But anyways,
Yeah.
after they figure out where they are, the kids usually talk about things like school. What's your school like? What do you do after school? What do you have for lunch? Um, what do you do for fun? Those sorts of things. And, you know, we had one connection, high school kids, and they were connecting and they were with a class in Poland. And they were all excited because the class in Poland had pierogies and they had fruit pierogies for lunch. So they were like, oh, we have to try those someday. And the kids here were like, well, we're close to the home of the buffalo wing. Oh, KFC. The kids in Poland thought it was KFC. So no, not KFC. They had to correct that misconception.
Mhm,
Um, but they talked a little bit more, they play soccer after school, all of these things. The call ended and the teacher very open-endedly, so guys, what did you think? Was she asking what'd you think of the call? What'd you think of the kids? Who knows? Um, but one of the kids was like, they're just like us. And she was, kind of flabbergasted and turned around because she had been walking around. She's like, what did you think they were going to be like? Did you think they were going to be purple? What did you expect?
mhm,
And, this conversation that no, other people, other places, yeah, they might look differently. They might have a different belief system or celebrate different holidays, but at heart, in talking with these other kids, you saw they're just like you. Talk about, an incredible lesson about empathy in a
mhm,
world that sometimes we don't understand each other because we don't know each other or it's an experience we haven't had.
mhm,
Distance learning, kind of breaks away those barriers and really allows for that sort of connection and even planting seeds of understanding. It might be something, maybe that impact, that moment, okay, they were just like us. But maybe they see something on the news, 5 years from now, and they go, or somebody says, oh, all people from that place are like this. And that student can say, but they're not. I've met somebody. Yeah, it was on Zoom, but I've talked with somebody from there.
mhm,
They're not all
mhm,
like that.
mhm,
Um, so I think, whether you're learning something, classroom, you're doing curriculum material, you're sharing projects,
mhm,
getting an authentic audience for things. And
mhm.
there's something to be said for that too. And I know I'm kind of really going off on a lot of things with your question, but
Yeah,
an
go for it.
authentic,
Yeah.
an authentic audience, when I think about our um our little rural schools, some of these students are in classes, they've been with the same 30 kids since kindergarten.
Mhm,
So when they have to do a presentation, they're very comfortable with the other people that are their audience,
mhm,
or very uncomfortable with that audience. To be able to have a different audience and maybe not know or be like, oh, I am presenting for these other kids that want to hear what I have to say.
mhm,
Um, there's something else. it takes the learning to a different level. It takes that preparation, like, well, I want them to see that we know what we're talking about, or that we're prepared. Um, it really does add something else to the lesson.
Yeah.
Um, so I think, you know, so much of distance learning and so much just this tool, this Zoom, being able to connect. I mean, yes, we've known each other for years. Years ago, I had to drive up to see you, or you had to drive down here to see us
Mhm.
because, there's space in the state. Now
Mhm.
I mean, before we could call on the phone, but I can see you. We can interact, in real time. There's power in that.
Yeah. Totally agree. And I can totally relate to what you're saying about the authentic audience and small rural schools. My children are in a district in their class is 30 students or fewer. And you're absolutely right. I mean, they know each other as if they're, brothers and sisters in many respects. And so being challenged to connect with an audience that you may not know as well, like for presentations or engagements and so forth, I have to believe there's huge value in that. I can totally relate to that as a parent, individually. I know we had talked about a term earlier, cultural capital. I think that's kind of what you're talking about also, building that cultural capital,
Yeah,
the intercultural experiences that they're having, right, through the
yeah,
possibility of technology. Absolutely.
absolutely. I mean, again, think about it. Some of these communities, sometimes there's not a lot of diversity.
Right.
Sometimes you don't meet somebody who looks different,
Yep.
who believes different, um, just celebrates different things. To have the ability to meet somebody that is different than you just builds your understanding of the world and the people that are in it, which our 21st century world is so interconnected. It's important. It's important for tomorrow's jobs. It's important for, just tomorrow's understanding, and even, just the harmony of our world. We really do have shared humanity, and it's important for us all to see that. And who else better to see this than, the leaders of tomorrow? So the students of today.
So thinking about shifting gears a little bit and thinking about, the role for teachers and understanding, the challenges that they are up against in terms of demands on their time and feeling there's only so much to go around. Maybe we could talk a little bit about like the methods or the pathway for teachers to maybe utilize either services in your district or services that may be available in their district. And maybe even before we get to that, maybe talk a little bit more about the format. I know you talked to me a little bit about how the Zoom works as far as, coordinating times and then, other school districts and then, like go through that a little bit and then we can
Sure.
talk about how do they find these opportunities, right?
Sure. So I'll talk about two things. First, I'll talk a little bit about our different connections, and then I'll talk about collaborations and field trips, because they're all a little bit different and run a little different.
Great.
So for our connections, so whether it's a career talk or a cultural connection, I would find a speaker of some sort. So, for example, I have in a couple weeks, I have Mary Beth Tinker, who's joining us to do a session with us, and she is going to talk about, Tinker versus Des Moines, and really her experience as in civic participation and student free speech and whatnot as a teenager, and how that's impacted her life and everything in the world that's kind of come after here in the US in regards to that ruling. So when I book a speaker, I put together a registration form, kind of talks about this is what the person's going to talk about, this is when it is. And because our speakers donate their time, it is one of the things I let them, like, here is the range of when our classes are free. You tell me what works for you. So that might not work for every teacher, and that's okay. So obviously we want these live interactions, and we allow for, because on Zoom, you can only see so many little squares. And when every little square is a classroom of kids, it's really tough to see them all. We want the speaker to be able to see them as much as possible. So we limit to 6 interactive sites, but we allow for as many view-only sites that can register. So, in a webinar 500, I can hit 500 sites. It's, you know, typically I don't get that many classes that register. What happens is the teachers want the recording. So we do record every session. That way, one, we have a library so you can go back to and archive, and teachers can use these for their classrooms, whether they're using something like an ed puzzle, whether it's a discussion type, they use bits and pieces of it in the classroom based on what they see and as appropriate for their community or for their curriculum. But I allow those teachers that can't make it to submit questions and whatnot beforehand. So the speaker will talk 25 to 40 minutes, depending on what they're talking about. And then we have time for Q&A for the kids. So it's really open-ended. The conversation goes where they want to go it. We've had some speakers. I had a local meteorologist who was phenomenal, and he gave a very brief background information about himself. And then he said, okay, I just want questions. And it just went where the conversation went. And it was great. The kids still asked everything he may have talked about, but it's just, he's like, I think this format's fine. I've worked with kids before. It'll be okay. I'm like, that's fine with me. And as moderator, I just would redirect where needed, or if there was a pause, I had questions ready to go. But again, it's really, what do the classes want to know? I can come up with all kinds of questions, which is great, but I want to know what the kids want to know and what the teachers are looking for the kids to take out of these experiences. With class to class collaborations, so a project where class here works the class here, those really, it depends on which project we're working on. So let's say there's something called Monster Match, which is cute for elementary school. So the kids, they make a monster out of just materials that they have around, like toilet paper rolls and rubber bands, whatever they might have that another school might have that's not expensive and whatnot. They write directions as they make this monster, and then they send it to the other class. The other class makes the monster on their own, and then they come together in video conference to show the monsters. And quite often, because these kids are in first and second grade, they don't look like what it was that the first class made. And it's a conversation about the importance of directions and clarity and how did you get here? The kids kind of giggle and laugh because the monsters are different, but then they talk about what they did. And again, it's that connection. They're in another part of New York State. So where's your school? And just really getting to know kids from somewhere else and reflecting on whatever that learning experience was. In that case, writing directions and the importance of having clear directions in what they do or how that can change the outcome of whatever it is that you're doing. But it's a fun way to show kids that that's important rather than, well, see, you followed the wrong direction and that's why it was wrong. Here it's just fun and engaging. And again, they are doing the learning. The teacher's kind of being that mentor and that guide towards the learning, but the kids are figuring it out. And quite often that too is just a more powerful lesson or a longer lasting lesson than if I stood up there and just told the kids.
What are you finding as far as equipment in the classrooms? Are there challenges there for teachers to get the right microphones or the whatever they need?
Oh, sometimes. I know different BOCES, like every BOCES does things a little bit differently.
Yep.
BOCES, if a teacher's doing, say, a virtual field trip that has this two-way connection
Yes.
where the presenter sees them and needs to see, they want to see the class and the class needs to see them. Obviously, they need some kind of a camera. We have portable Zoom kits that have a camera and they have, a puck mic that can just plug into a USB. Really simple. Same thing with the camera. So really easy for teachers to use and they can borrow should they need that. But, can you just use your camera that's on your laptop and angle it towards your class? Yeah. Some teachers do it. It's not a huge deal. You make do with what you have and it often works just fine. The biggest thing, if that's what teachers are doing, we always just give them some best practices. Have the kids walk up to wherever your mic is. If it's your computer, where they have to talk into for the presenter, that's fine, or the teacher will repeat it. But so many classrooms have the smart boards now, that's a huge help. So it's easy to project whatever is happening
Mhm.
on the webinar or field trip or connection with the other class. If they can Zoom, really it's pretty easy since so many of these programs are via Zoom.
Mhm. 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 And so I'm trying to keep track of the programs that you've mentioned. You've mentioned the diversity, the cultural connections, right?
Yep.
And then you have the career connections program. What were there's another one. I'm
So,
forgetting.
yep, the class to class collaboration.
Yeah.
So it's like the
Yep.
monster match. The global collaborations,
Yep.
like the mystery Skype, or, you know, pretty much sky's the limit with that. Because if a teacher says, I'm looking for pen pals, or I'm looking for, I have one teacher, we're trying to set up a culinary exchange where the classes exchange recipes, they make them, and then they just kind of talk about food. Who doesn't want to
Mhm.
talk about food? I like to talk about food. Um,
Absolutely. Right.
right? Um, but field trips, there are, and I'm just going to share my screen because this is worth seeing. Um, Field trips are super easy to find, whether you're paying for a field trip or whether you're looking for
Okay.
something that has no cost to it. There are so many programs. This is the Center for Interactive Learning and Collaboration, and I like to share them because they're one of the first places I go when I'm looking for a field trip for a teacher. And so Laura, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Give
Mhm.
me a topic that might come up in a classroom.
Climate change.
All right, so
Yep. Weather.
pop up weather. So I can, if I look up weather, I can see, and it's spinning now, but it should pop up in a second. Oh, it already is. These are just some of the first things that come up when I pop in weather. I can see, if they cost money, you'll see the little tickets. And if you click on one, it will give you a little bit more information, but I want to click on one that's free.
Mhm.
So a misconception people have, especially since COVID, free might mean it's not good because it's, put together. And I'm going to tell you that's not true. A lot of the different free experiences, their National Park Service, Smithsonian, um, it could be the Pro Football Hall of Fame's programs are all free because they're funded by a grant. So don't be discouraged if you see some of these. And quite honestly, a lot of my teachers, they do free programs because they may not have budgets that they can use for field trips. But you can find programs you can look through. It'll give you a description. This is one that's pretty interactive. You're a meteorologist in training. So again, that experiential type learning. And it kind of tells you what's there, but this is where I talk about, and it will lay out what it is. Like, this is what this is like. It's an
Mhm.
interactive mission. This is what kids are going to be able to do at the end so that no one be able to do. Here's what you got. And you can kind of go from there, whether it's something you want to do or not.
Mhm. Mhm.
If
Mhm.
sometimes I have teachers not quite sure if they want to do something where it's that point to point connection. I don't know if my kids will be engaged by that. I'm not really sure. What's amazing about CILC, and this is where I get a lot of my teachers to kind of dip their toes in the water. They have this, is this the one I want? Yes. The community of learning, they have webinars almost every day of the week at 1 o'clock. And you can go, so there's not that, it's not the same interact level of interaction. You can still ask things on the Q&A. Go up a little bit. So this week they have something with the Smithsonian, there's something with the Country Music Hall of Fame. And some of these, if you were looking at them, are actually field trips that have a cost associated with them. But the
Mhm.
kids can actually, you can try it, you could preview it, you can see if it works well.
Mhm.
Um, but you could even see the student level of engagement, like, oh, they really did do okay with that. Okay, maybe I do want to try one where we are a little bit more interactive. Um, so this is also where I have, if I've got somebody that might be a little reluctant, I'm not sure, why not try a webinar? And the CILC does have a YouTube page, and these webinars are usually posted for about a week after. So it's something to check out to see what they're like.
Mhm.
Um, they do have adult ones as well in the afternoon, usually National Park Service ones, but it's just amazing to see what is out there. If if you're thinking of a topic, you can find it. And oh, go
That's
ahead.
great. Yeah. So what I was going to say is we'll definitely link to this in the show notes along with this episode for sure. And I think part of what you're conveying here that maybe I missed earlier is that so, you know, for teachers, they can either pursue these opportunities on their own, such as on that center's website and look for topics on their own, which is certainly encouraged and perhaps may work well in some scenarios. Or if there's the option for an individual like you in their district or in their BOCES region to take advantage or leverage the expertise that you have, the connections, the experiences, those collect that time invested in coordinating those events, then they have that they can take advantage of that opportunity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I am going to say about the different distance learning, departments at different BOCES, our
Yep.
COSERs, um, a lot of us have very small staffs. My department is 6 people. So, and we serve 22 districts. So again, first and foremost, our priority are those shared courses and even online courses that some schools use for credit recovery or whatnot. But
Okay.
in the event, so every BOCES might run a little bit differently. Their distance learning specialist may or may not be able to do as much as what I do. We have one of the, a larger department to work with, so we are pretty fortunate there. But I'll share my screen again.
Yeah.
If you go to, I don't think it popped up yet. Hang on one moment. If you go to the New York State Distance Learning Consortium,
Hmm.
nysdlc.org. And, I think I saw in the show notes already, you can search by your BOCES.
Hmm.
So if your BOCES was, Cattaraugus, Allegheny, Erie, Wyoming BOCES, you can see which districts are participating.
Yep.
So if your district is a part of that, you could reach out and say, I'd like to learn more about distance learning. Um, I know I've gone to a couple different conferences and shared some of the work that we do with, the State English Conference, the State Social Studies Conference, and, just connected people like, oh, we didn't know that this was something that was available to us. And that's okay because again, so much is shared courses and, um, what we do is growing. It After the pandemic, a lot of people took us a step back. These were services that were happening before the pandemic. Distance learning has been around for a long time,
Yeah.
but after the pandemic, for some people, it was that hard stop with technology. Nope, I don't want to touch it. I just want to be paper and pen. And, kind of that, it's one of those things we say there's trauma there. There definitely, you were doing a lot of new things as a teacher and going back to, okay, I was trying things before, but I want to go back to what I'm very comfortable with. And I was overly saturated with some of this technology. Now people are starting to work and try again. And, you know, if other people can help you, come and see it. If you come to our collaborations and projects, you can see kind of the gamut of the different class to class collaborations that we put together. And again, these are for, if your district is part of the consortium, these are things you can sign up for. Um, and we share these. So the solar eclipse collaborations, there are, gosh, so she doesn't list them here, but I want to say there's 5 different sorts of class to class things you can do, like a poetry slam. Let's share your public service announcement about the eclipse. What would you put together if you were a media coordinator? And again, for classes to come together and talk. Some of it is to share art and make recycled art related to the eclipse. Um, but we have the different things that we offer throughout the year here on the site for people to take a look at. And again, it's something, come back and do. We did a statewide sing along with the Manhattan School of Music. Let me tell you, that was a blast. It was so much fun. And
Mm.
the kids sang in their locations. We had the artist, jazz artist from Manhattan School of Music who sang. And then we had a couple classes that they got to present their song. So they prepared different songs and, what a great way to connect with each other and just get into the spirit of the season. But we do a lot of different programs. So many of these are elementary based because of the flexibility elementary school teachers have. And then the career connections and diversity and cultural connections quite often tend to be a little bit more high school based. And some of what we've done, um, we've actually added some project-based learning that connects with the career connections so that teachers have an idea. All right, you have these videos. Yeah, you might want to see them, or some kids might want to see, like, oh gosh, I want to see the guy that works for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I want to see the guy that's the head dancer on at Wicked. Um, Kids have different interests and different paths and trying to figure out their interests. So using these videos, the project-based learning that we put together for teachers to use as a springboard, they don't have to use it as is. It helps kids explore their own just their own personalities, their own strengths, things they like, has them reflect, well, what kind of lifestyle do I want? Do I want to be a performer that works nights and weekends? I'm not sure. Maybe that's not for me. Really has them starting to think about what direction they might go and what they want to learn about. Do they like to work with their hands? Do they maybe want to go into a trade and learn about, here are college careers, here are careers in this kind of learning cluster. Here are careers that you could go and learn about at a CTE program. What is a CTE or a PTech program? So to learn about and gain that awareness of, well, here are some options you have for your learning. And again, for the kids to start taking ownership of that. And then, can you get one of these jobs where you live? Maybe, maybe not. If I want to be an archaeologist though, I probably can't stay where I live. I probably have to go somewhere else. And if I want to stay where I live to be near family, then maybe I have to think about something else. So it really gets these kids reflecting. And one of the reasons we put that together was, you know, so many of us, I'll put my parent hat on for a second. I listen to my own kids, the things that they wish that they had known or somebody had talked to them about. Um, and as a parent with a kiddo in scouts, I watch all of the reflective learning that my son does through his badge work and
Mhm.
even service work. They worked at a maple farm the other day, but he saw how much work goes into collecting sap and putting it together. And then they sell that syrup. They help make it and then they sell it. And he understands and can explain all of that. Again, could he have watched that on a video? Of course he could. Going to do that was huge, but then reflecting on it, his own self-reflection, you know, so much more than if I just told him, he came to those conclusions.
Mhm.
Um, but all of our programs here for anybody, after they've happened live, um, they're here, they're on this website. So you can come, you can see what's coming. Dr. Levon Bracey's our next one. And she was one of the first people actually the first student to graduate from Gainesville High School after it was integrated. So she's going to talk about her story with, this is what it was like to integrate a school. And she's a huge voting rights advocate. Like, just go register to vote. This is why voting is important. And you have this right, should you want as a citizen, to go and exercise to vote. But really, I mean, you can see we've had just so many different sorts of experiences, and it's because it's based on what teachers have told us they were looking for in the curriculum.
Mhm.
And this program, these speaker series, it just started last year. Again, it was that catalyst of the idea that why not? Why not get kids talking with people who are in different places, and especially across our state? A lot of these, if I could, they're New York State people. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So that helps as well. And after
Absolutely.
last year, really just trying to get them, you know, teachers, what are you looking for? What can I find for you? And, we've just been running with it. So
Wow, that library of videos really looks awesome. So impressive. So my thoughts are like moving going to the future now. Like I mean, you've got a fantastic sort of start, I assume, and things are growing and I know at one point you told me about your views, your man or tracking your views for the year which is over last year. You can get into the details. So what's next? Where is distance learning going, sort of in the K-12 in this lane, going forward, you think?
I think so when I look at skills kids need. So this is me just thinking. Our job as educators, in my opinion, is to prepare kids for their tomorrows, whatever their tomorrow is going to be. They need to leave us with this toolbox. I was very fortunate to go to a conference, the Aurora Institute, really awesome. Just different conference. If you're looking for something, check it out. But I was at this one session, and the principal said, "We have a saying, elementary school, what is the most important day to get the kids ready for? It's the day after graduation."
Mhm.
And that phrase, wish I had coined it, I did not, but it stuck with me because it's so true. What we are doing day in, day out, yeah, kids take tests, they do all this stuff, but the test is not, they're not taking, a bubble test every day of their life. They have to apply things. They have to figure out like, oh, I have this problem. How do I solve it? And so many things that they're going to do when we look at the careers of tomorrow and how quickly our world is evolving, whether it be even think about AI. If you've played with AI and think about that as a tool kids are going to need for tomorrow, they need to understand how to use it, how to write really good questions and queries with it. Um, and, you know, to start before they can really use it, maybe in a super serious setting, their job when they're 25 and 20 years from now. There's Mad Libs that you can play with it. And it actually shows you like this is how you questioned well. Or not Mad Libs, the one, oh, like headbands or something. One of
Mm,
those taboo, one of those games. But it actually at the end it analyzes how great your questions were. So it's teaching the kids to reflect on their questioning strategies and how they used and questioned the AI to guess the word that they couldn't say. Um, but really, education, what do they need for tomorrow? These kids need to be able to communicate. They need to be able to use these tools, whether it be Zoom. Think about what we do in our jobs. I mean, even 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought about interviewing with you online.
mhm.
Not because I wasn't in a distance learning position. This technology was not something we used on a day-to-day basis.
Correct.
So, you know, kids need to have as many different experiences as they can have because the kids that have the experiences and can evolve and be able to be creative in what they do next as things evolve or be able to learn like, okay, I can learn anything because, well, this is new. I want to learn it. It's cool. Like, all right, I'm curious. If we build curious learners as the world changes, they're going to continue to be curious and be able to learn. If everything is always the same and the learning changes, it might be tough for them.
Mhm.
And the kids that can evolve and keep learning and be curious and continue to grow, you know, I mean, I am where I am today because I was able, I wanted to continuously grow. I love to learn. I
Mhm.
love to play with new technology and new toys. And, you know, technology sometimes doesn't always go the way it isn't always perfect as it's evolving or as it's new, but it's something that's there, and it's something that I wanna have a grasp of and be able, as an educator, have the students or have my teachers that I work with not be afraid of trying to use it, but to see it as, not, "Oh, I have to do this." No, you get to do this. It's
Mhm.
so amazing, and look what it can do to help your kids. Look what kinds of experiences they can get from that. When you see that and you look at it that in a different lens or look at it like, okay, maybe you don't want to do this because it's a little more work to start, but put your parent hat on for a second. If that was your own child sitting in that classroom, Do you want the teacher up there just talking to them all the time, every single class, or do you want them doing and trying and exploring? Quite often, they're going to tell you they want their kids to explore. They don't want them to be bored at school. They want them to be excited to go and learn. That's what our jobs are. And I think when I think about technology and I think about distance learning, I think distance learning really has that ability to keep kids curious, to keep them learning, to keep them connecting. I
Mhm.
mean, earlier this year, I had a class reach out, a teacher reach out. They were reading Raisin in the Sun. They were in Germany. Now it was August, so I didn't have any teachers that I could connect them with. They were looking for a US class to connect with, to talk about, well, we're reading this here. They wanted to share their perspectives, but they wanted to hear the American perspective because the story takes place here.
Oh,
And it, again,
yeah.
just that interconnectedness. It's
So it
it's
works both
incredible.
ways. It works both ways. It's
It does.
really, yeah, yeah.
Distance learning is super important for equity. Sometimes we don't think about that for equity and inclusion, but if you have, let's say you have students that maybe schools go on this DC trip every year,
Yes.
and so many schools go, and what happens to those kids that are left behind? So many, either they're given a packet, they might, watch a movie, they're bored, or either that or they stay home. Um, why not? There are so many national parks and things there. They have programs that are virtual programs. So, putting together, here is a menu of things you could do with the kids that are behind using virtual field trips or virtual speakers and going on this kind of adventure, even though they're still at school. It dissolve those walls and let them have a similar DC experience. It kind of brings, yes, they still didn't go to DC. I understand that, but it's the next best thing. And it kind of feels like an adventure when the kids come back and say, oh, we went here. Oh, I did that too. And I went to, so the International Spy Museum is there. That's not one that's on itineraries of schools. So when I looked at different itineraries and I'm making suggestions of what you could do to teachers, like, okay, here's what you could go on virtually,
Mhm.
oh, well, we did this. And then the kids have something to talk about. They have an experience. They have something to share with the kids that were there. Um, and maybe they didn't go. It brings that, I say it levels the playing field, but it gives more experience instead of, well, too bad you couldn't go. Here's some homework from your teachers.
Yeah.
Um,
Punishment rather
yeah.
than, yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
So again, it helps to bring that full experience to, if it's in my school where my kids go, they go in 8th grade. So the 8th graders that can't go for whatever reason, and maybe it's not a financial reason, maybe it's a health reason, maybe it's something else.
Mhm.
Sometimes there are kids that they broke their leg or they have other health challenges that, travel is not something that they can do for whatever reason at that time.
Mhm.
Um, this allows for a little bit of that equity and that inclusion so they
Mhm.
don't feel so left out. Um, Distance learning really, really brings that to the forefront and is a great way to use these tools to help kids.
Absolutely. So, Liz, I know we're getting to the top of the hour. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I'm going to share that. So, you're on your way to ISTE.
I am on
T-
my way to ISTE. Yep.
Tell us about that if you could, real quick.
Yeah. So, was really, really pleased. I put in 2 proposals for ISTE and both were accepted. I
So
have 2 poster
exciting.
presentations. So if you are coming to ISTE, um, you should definitely come check me out. I have 2 poster panels on Wednesday. I believe it's the 26th of June.
Great.
One is really going to talk about the power of the global collaborations and global connections of having kids connect globally. And really going to focus on, the Chris Lubbe, Nelson Mandela's former bodyguard, that whole the reflection from the students and whatnot. We did another one. My UK partner and I did another similar one for Holocaust Remembrance Day with the Anne Frank youth youth director, and from the Anne Frank youth, the Anne Frank House, and then we are also doing a connection for Earth Day where the kids share their presentations based on the topic of plastics versus the world. I think is the topic that we just put together. So talking about how the impact or how to change what's happening with plastics, but the kids and the teachers get to kind of determine what they want to talk about. Um, and then the other one, we're going to talk about Mystery Skype, that geography 20 questions. And if anybody happens to be going to the social studies conference in Albany next week, I'll be there too. But really, in Albany, we're actually going to simulate one, and we'll be connecting with somewhere in the world. I can't tell you where in case you're there. Yeah, no spoilers. But again, it's unbelievably powerful to see and to actually see what it's like. At ISTE, I'm going to talk about, with one of my other colleagues from the New York State Distance Learning Consortium, we're going to talk about the power, the empathy, kind of share some examples of what students have done and what teachers, how they use it. Some use it as a one-off. Some use it as geography, like they're looking for specific places all over the world and they track where they've gone throughout the year. Some use it as, we're going to use this as an introduction, and then we're going to work with that class throughout the year on something, whatever it is, the project that they want to talk about, or they're going to be their partner for every time they do presentations. So, every teacher uses this a little bit differently, and it's what works for your classroom. So that's, we're just trying to get people, dive in,
So exciting. Yeah,
yeah,
that sounds awesome. What a great adventure. And congratulations on the acceptance and the proposals. And it'll be a fantastic experience, all the people you'll meet and connections made. So, well, we're so lucky to have you, Liz. New York State is lucky, and your school districts. And of course, me personally, so happy that you're willing to share your expertise and your skills here today and your story. And yeah, I'm really very excited to share this with the colleagues, in my class and potentially through their contacts, get the word out about distance learning and opportunities here in New York State and in K-12. So yeah,
absolutely.
awesome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And if anybody has questions, they're more than, please direct them. I love to talk about this stuff. I think it's great. It's going to change the world.
Awesome. All right. We'll be sure to pass it along. Thank you. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right.